Chapter 131, A Win Like Youth. After departing from Bonder's group, Zhang Tai ended up today's plan for hunting wild wolves. Although he had looked very calm before Bonder's group, actually, he was not that calm inwardly. It was also Zhang Tai's first time to seeing his peers die in front of him. Or maybe they were also the first casualties in this survival training. It was told by teachers at school that above 70% of casualties in survival training happened on the second month after it started. This was because after a month's time in survival training, the horny students became much braver than before, although their fighting force didn't improve that fast, easily causing tragedies. Zhang Tai wandered on the path of the Wild Wolf Valley while thinking about the bloody wounds, which reminded him of the survival rules in this world. Even the lowest level disparity would lead to a life or death situation and further cause mixed emotions in the weaker party's family members. For families, for mothers and many relatives of the four youths would feel extremely dejected due to the huge wolves this noon. Zhang Tai could imagine how grieved the families would be after learning what had happened to their kids. His own family members had experienced the same grievance. Although his eldest brother had died on the battlefield many years ago, its impact on his parents was everlasting. Fist skill is namely power. When one exerts their utmost effort, one will obtain the essence of the skill. The general outline of Iron Blood Fist flashed across Zhang Tai's mind. He had a new understanding of this sentence. The route the Fibonacci golden numerical array pointed at was not a path of evolution, but a path of power based on real force. The greatest and ultimate power in this world was the power to determine others' life or death, and the power to beat others into hell. The second Snade and Huck will never be allowed in my life, Zhang Tai told himself. Besides myself, nobody else is allowed to determine my destiny. Thinking this, he quickened his pace. 10 minutes later, when Zhang Tai passed by a river, a red-eyed wild wolf abruptly jumped out of the reeds and rushed Zhang Tai. Almost the moment the wild wolf left the reeds, a lance had already fallen from the sky and nailed it to the ground. Zhang Tai dashed past it without even a bit of deceleration. Without even glancing at his victim, he passed the wild wolf, just pulling out his lance and putting it back into this lance container before continuing on his way. Who's that guy? A hunting team composed of 8 or 9 students widely opened their eyes at the sight of what Zhang Tai had done. Just now, when the wild wolf had jumped out, they even wanted to shout out to warn him. Unexpectedly, before they could scream out, everything had come to an end. Not until Zhang Tai had long disappeared did that group of people arrive at the wild wolf that had been nailed to the ground. After checking it carefully, they all took a deep breath. Judging from the wound on the wild wolf, they realized that the lance must have entered its body from beneath the neck and exited from the back of its heart, causing a SEC kill. It was really great. Was that a coincidence? They felt really lucky today as they put away the dead wild wolf. Can we just do this? One of the people in the group of students asked. If he felt this wild wolf was valuable, he would have stayed. Do you think a man who can easily kill a wild wolf would treasure a dead wild wolf? Hearing his words, everybody else nodded. Let's go, brothers, it's not early today, this wolf is enough for us to eat for 2 days, the leader said, waving his hand. Who's that man? I've never heard of him before. Trust me, such a sharp guy would never be unknown. We will know who he is if we casually inquire about other people in Wild Wolf Castle. Zhang Tai kept running at a medium speed. He had already learned how to run in the first week when the survival training started. If he ran too fast, he could not continue it for long. Besides high consumption of physical strength, if he ran too fast, he might also miss something, especially changing terrains in hills, which might hurt him later by preventing him to make the most correct response to some incoming crisis. In contrast, if he ran too slowly, his moving range would be extremely limited, which might also cause him to miss something. Especially for loners who needed to hunt for prey by themselves like Zhang Tai, if he always stayed in a small area, he might do nothing but wait for starvation as he would have fewer chances to find any prey. Therefore, for a loner, the most proper running pattern was at a medium speed, which would enable one to keep running for 1 to 2 hours without feeling fatigued, and enable one to get familiar with the surrounding environment and terrain by running as well as expanding the moving range. In other words, running at a medium speed could help to exert the utmost fighting force every time and then respond to some emergencies without feeling too tense. Besides running speed, Zhang Tai also learned how to breath while running. It took him 1 week to master this medium-speed moving skill at his most proper rhythm. Now, Zhang Tai could keep running at such a speed for 1 hour on rugged mountain roads while retaining his maximal fighting force. He felt that this kind of running was like a vocabulary cruising speed that was used to evaluate the performance of an aerocraft called plane taught by science teachers at school. Zhang Tai had already mastered the skill of cruise control during the first week upon starting the loner's survival training. His cruising speed was about 15 kilometers per hour. He could kept running at this speed for about 1 hour while still maintaining his maximal fighting force. Wasn't it interesting? He had become a plane himself. He was lucky just now and killed one more wild wolf, indicating that the wild wolf 7-strength fruit was that much closer to becoming ripe. Thinking of this, Zhang Tai accelerated. He really enjoyed the feeling of free running in the valley. During his previous 15 years, Zhang Tai had lived a boring life in Black Hot City. Besides going to school, he would be either at Donder's grocery store or home. During that period, he had not experienced such a freestyle. Simply by running like this, Zhang Tai felt pretty happy. If he could stick to it, he would prefer to keep running like the wind for the rest of his life. This way, he could go wherever he wanted, letting the motherland move under his feet. He would prefer to keep running freely like this without caring about anything else so that he could view the scenery of the whole world. By free running in the valley alone, Zhang Tai felt that he had fallen in love with the loner's survival training. When the fiery sun's glow appeared in the west sky, Zhang Tai finally arrived at the place which he had named as his number 2 base after over 1 hour's running. This was a natural mountain cave, over 10 meters above the ground. Its inclination downwards was about 80 to 90 degrees. A pile of vines hung down from the top, allowing one to climb onto the mountain cave along the stones and bulges by holding onto them. The mountain cave was more than 20 kilometers away from the Wild Wolf Castle. This place was a bit farther than where he had met Bonder's group yesterday. More than 10 kilometers away from the other side of the cave was the Crescent Prairie. The space between the ranges on both sides of the Wild Wolf Valley abruptly expanded greatly here, like an opening door. 1 week after he started his loner's survival training, Zhang Tai's moving range gradually increased and grew closer and closer to the Crescent Prairie. When he arrived beneath the mountain cave, Zhang Tai looked around, seeing no one. He then pulled the vines and climbed onto the entrance of the mountain cave. When he reached the entrance, Zhang Tai squatted to carefully check those scattered leaves from the vines and some broken stones on the ground for roughly 20 seconds. After that, he stood on tiptoes and carefully walked in by stepping only in specific locations. Those items on the ground were not traps, but a wild mark system used by pioneers. Once anybody had entered the entrance after Zhang Tai left, through that wild mark system that seemed a disorderly scattering, Zhang Tai would know of it. This was a trick that pioneers usually used in the wild. A set of wild mark system could reveal a lot of information. Many pioneer teams added secret languages and signals in the wild mark system that could only be understood by their own. Sometimes, a withered twig, several leaves, and broken stones scattered casually on the ground in insiders' eyes would contain dozens of messages based on their location and the direction they were facing. They might also be used as an early warning device like how Zhang Tai was using them. As long as anyone had entered, he would know. After checking it, Zhang Tai did nothing else but sat down on a stone at the entrance of the mountain cave. In the breeze, he stared at the sunset far in the distance. The setting sun was really beautiful. Before this loner's survival training, Zhang Tai had not seriously watched it. However, these days, he would always sit calmly somewhere and watch the sunset in the skyline until it fell behind the mountain and disappeared. This was another reason for why Zhang Tai came to like the loner's survival training. Besides free running, he could also calmly sit anywhere he wanted and enjoy the beautiful sunset without worrying about being pointed at and called an idiot by surrounding horny students. The world has its own beautiful scenery. This was Zhang Tai's feeling when he was enjoying the sunset. I wonder how long Dad and Mom haven't enjoyed such a beautiful sunset. Thinking of their increasingly white hair due to hard work every day, Zhang Tai vowed that when he was rich he would definitely buy a big house just for them. That big house will contain 2 huge balconies, one to the east so that his parents could enjoy the first wisp of sunlight when they woke up, the other to the west so that they could enjoy the beautiful sunset sitting on a very comfortable huge chair on sunny days. Previously, Zhang Tai might not have been able to make this dream come true even if he used up the rest of his life. However, now he understood that once he had enough power, he will definitely let his parents live such a pleasant life. Although he could not make it at LV2, what about LV3? LV4? LV5? LV6? LV7? LV8? LV9? LV10? His elder brother had told him a LV10 military official in Black Hot City was qualified to be allocated with an independent villa. Oh, and that appointment with Miss Dana. When the sun finally set, the afterglow in the skyline also gradually dissipated. Several aboriginal residents of the mountain cave bats flew out and started their nightlife. Zhang Tai then entered into the deep of the mountain cave where he could access the castle of black iron and improve his strength using another method. As he had killed 5 huge wolves today, Zhang Tai knew that a new trouble reappearance fruit would have formed on the small tree. He had concluded in the past few days that once he could kill more than 3 wild wolves or huge wolves, he could get a new trouble reappearance fruit on that very day. He had eaten 4 trouble reappearance fruits these days, enabling him to choose 8 trouble reappearance scenes and activating over 23 wolf souls, 1, at once, 22 of which had wild wolves and 1 a huge wolf. Little by little he started to discover more and more secrets about the trouble reappearance fruit. After eating the 3rd and the 4th trouble reappearance fruits, Zhang Tai had found that the fruits actually contained 2 elements, namely trouble reappearance scene and wolf souls. He could allocate the wolf souls at his own will and arrange them in his designated trouble reappearance scene. After activating them, they would fight him. The 2 elements of trouble reappearance fruit could be joined or separated at his will. Each trouble reappearance fruit would bring him 2 more elements that could be used to further improve his fighting skills, namely fighting environment and fighting objectives. The trouble reappearance fruit was really great. It was simply amazing. After practicing in trouble reappearance fruit, Zhang Tai felt his fighting and killing skills were rapidly improving. After killing 5 huge wolves today, he couldn't wait to try fighting 6 huge wolves and 22 wild wolves at the same time in the trouble reappearance fruit. Chapter 132, An Unexpected Accident in the Trouble Reappearance Scene. After entering the trouble reappearance scene, at the sight of roughly 30 wolves, including 6 huge wolves and 23 common, at least 2 of which were head wolves, Zhang Tai became somewhat regretful. He knew that he would definitely die miserably this time. Before entering, Zhang Tai had chosen the riverside where he had killed the latest wild wolf. Almost the second Zhang Tai entered the trouble reappearance scene, the 30 wolves rushed out of the reeds, exposing their canines at Zhang Tai. While the pack of wolves rushed towards him, Zhang Tai threw 6 lances with both hands, like a lightning bolt. In a split second, 2 huge wolves and 4 wild wolves were pierced through by his lances and fell down. Originally, Zhang Tai intended to aim for the 6 huge wolves. Of course, it didn't precisely mean that he had failed to hit them. Unexpectedly, when he threw out his lances towards the 6 huge wolves, the surrounding wild wolves dashed ahead and stopped the lances for the huge wolves using their own bodies. So he only hit 2 huge wolves, while the other 4 lances were caught by the 4 wild wolves. Seeing such an emergency, Zhang Tai was really startled. He then instantly realized that the wild wolves which he had been fighting with these days were becoming smarter and trickier. It seemed that he was not the only one who could improve his fighting and killing skills. The wolf souls inside the trouble reappearance scene had also improved, which was finally shown today. The only thing in the wolves that remained unchanged was the endless hatred in their eyes. After throwing the 6 lances, Zhang Tai immediately turned back and exerted his utmost efforts to escape. He wanted to try whether a LV-2 warrior could gain a beacon of hope from the remaining pack of wolves. If he only fought them at the risk of his life, he would definitely die. This time, being akin to the scene when he was chased by the 7 wolves on the grassland, the only factors that he could use were environment and terrain. Zhang Tai then escaped, closely followed by the pack of wolves. He ran so fast, yet the huge wolves could run faster. He didn't move more than 50 m by the riverside when he felt wind behind his head. Twisting his body, Zhang Tai immediately pulled out his dagger from his waist and thrust it towards the abdomen of the huge wolf charging at him from behind. Huge wolves' strength and aggressiveness could never be matched by common wild wolves. If it was a common wild wolf, Zhang Tai could have easily finished this counterattack without even decelerating. However, it was a huge wolf whose strength and speed caused him to stagger. After falling onto the ground, the huge wolf even rushed 2 steps forward due to the huge inertia. After that, he turned back and glared at Zhang Tai, seemingly wanting to charge at him once again. However, he soon fell to the ground as Zhang Tai's thrust had completely opened his abdomen. At the same time, Zhang Tai realized that he could not escape anymore. He understood that even if he was 1 level higher than the huge wolves, he could still not match speed with them. Maybe it could be feasible when he reached LV3, but he could definitely not match them for the time being. Although he could not really die in the trouble reappearance scene, he could feel pain. So not wanting to die miserably, Zhang Tai immediately made the same choice that he would have done in the real situation if he was chased by so many wolves. He jumped into the river. Water along the riverside was only as deep as his knees. It was muddy under his feet, so it was very difficult to walk inside. Only after 2 steps after jumping into the river, Zhang Tai's shoes were already stuck to the mud. 2 steps more, and he could only escape on barefoot. The wild wolves closely following him all rushed into the river without any hesitation. Zhang Tai had already predicted that. Because after he had eaten the first trouble reappearance fruit, Zhang Tai had attempted to jump into the black hole many times. However, he found out that soon after he jumped inside, the wild wolves also followed him in. They would not stop chasing him until either they, or he, died. They dared to jump into a black hole, let alone a river. Less than 10 m from the river's shore, the water level had already reached his thighs. The river was not turbulent. It flowed calmly, and so did the part which would be drowned in flood while showing itself when the water receded. Zhang Tai turned back and found a huge wolf 1.7 to 2 m away from him. Not until then had he realized that wolves could swim well. Wolves swim using dog paddle. Zhang Tai also learned to dog paddle at school. Judging from swimming gestures, he could not even match wolves in swimming skills. In the trouble reappearance scene, a battle between human and wolves that could never be seen in reality would happen in the river. As most of Zhang Tai's legs below his knees were in the mud, he could barely move his feet, let alone using them to attack wolves. Similarly, the pack of wolves swimming towards him were also slower due to the resistance in the water. So their largest threat to Zhang Tai became their sharp canines. When in water, the matrix of the wolves became disordered. Seeing this, Zhang Tai burst out laughing and threw the dagger in his hand. Using a wrestle hand move from Iron Blood Fist, he wrestled the neck of the huge wolf. As a response, the huge wolf prepared to bite Zhang Tai's wrist. At this time, Zhang Tai's two hands ferociously punched its ears like hammers, causing blood to burst out from its eyes. Even though this hurt it badly, the front paws of the huge wolf also scratched Zhang Tai's arms, leaving some bloody marks. In only one round, both parties were bleeding. However, the fact was that Zhang Tai acted faster. The disparity between a LV-2 warrior and a LV-1 wolf could not be easily ignored either. The moment the huge wolf lowered his head due to Zhang Tai's hammer-like punches, Zhang Tai grabbed it around its neck once again. With a sound of ka-cha, the huge wolf's neck was broken. Zhang Tai loosened his grip before sinking the huge wolf into the river. Behind this huge wolf were more wolves with eyes shining red. Zhang Tai had no way to escape once again. Ha, ha, cool. Zhang Tai burst out laughing. Come on, you beasts, since I could kill you all before, I can also kill you all now. Do you want revenge? Come on. A battle between a human and wolf started. In the shallow river, a pack of wolves launched a war on a person. In muddy water, Zhang Tai surged left and right using his hammer-like punch move and wrestle hand move, causing bloody ripples. Without fighting in water, Zhang Tai would have never known the difficulties of it. He felt his physical strength dissipating so fast that each move in water would consume strength numerous times greater than that required fighting on the bank. The faster he moved, the more strength he would consume due to the greater resistance in water. Each step in the deep river mud would also bring him more difficulty. Only after 10 minutes, over 10 dead wild wolves were floating in the river. Zhang Tai had also suffered more than 20 wounds. At this time, he understood another law: even if his level was higher than that of wild wolves, his endurance could never match theirs. Each wild wolf had amazing endurance. Gradually, he felt his hands becoming more and more clumsy, causing weaker attacking strength and speed. However, the wild wolves kept surging forward without even knowing what tiredness was, only wanting to bite him. Seeing them so tenacious, Zhang Tai's morality and cruelty were also triggered. Gritting his teeth, he continued to fight the wolves, seemingly having fully forgotten about the increasing wounds on his body. After staying in the trouble reappearance scene for so long time, Zhang Tai found he had also gained more endurance, being able to ignore more of his pain and wounds. 5 minutes later, a few more wild wolves were killed, causing more wounds on Zhang Tai's body. Thankfully, the wounds were not fatal. By then, their battlefield had already stretched to dozens of meters along the shallow river. Zhang Tai started to feel his hammer-like punches becoming weaker and weaker. It would take him longer to break a wolf's neck. Just now, it had taken him too long, and he couldn't respond to the wolf's counterattack timely, causing a bite on his arm from another wolf. Pained, Zhang Tai became more ferocious. Although another wolf was hanging on his arm, he still chose to break the neck of the wolf in his hands first before breaking the neck of the wolf on his arm. The last ferocious attack seemed like the last bright look of a person who was going to die soon after. After taking care of the wolf hanging on his arm, Zhang Tai felt his hands becoming soft, which could not even break a noodle. At this time, another wolf launched its attack. To respond, Zhang Tai immediately lurched aside. However, for some reason at this critical moment, Zhang Tai suddenly became stunned for a short time, during which the wolf bit Zhang Tai's shoulder, pushing him into the water, closely followed by the remaining wolves. Half a minute later, with a sound of boom, the entire trouble reappearance scene dissipated into light rain before disappeared. This was the most bloody and miserable battle with wild wolves that Zhang Tai had experienced, and it ended up with wild wolves as the winners. Sitting under the Manjusaka Karma fruit tree, Zhang Tai opened his eyes like when he had entered the trouble reappearance scene just now. He then raised his head and looked at the rolling colorful fog in the sky within the castle of black iron with a bit of confusion, puzzlement, and even shock in his eyes. How could that happen? Zhang Tai mumbled. How could I feel like having stepped onto a sharp thing just now? How could such a sharp thing appear in the mud of the shallow river in the trouble reappearance scene? That was not necessary. Did it want to test my responsiveness? Zhang Tai didn't figure it out even after thinking about it for a while. Just now, when he prepared to escape from the wolf's attack, he stepped onto a sharp thing in the mud. Because of this, he became stunned, causing him to be killed by the wolves. What if there really was such a sharp thing in the real river? A thought flashed across Zhang Tai's mind like a lightning bolt. Chapter 133, Searching for the Sharp Item. Translator, Editor. Damn, I must be mad. On the way, Zhang Tai mumbled this sentence for more than 50 times. However, he was driven by that idea to run towards that riverside where he had killed the wild wolf yesterday. It was the second morning, and Zhang Tai had gotten up earlier than before. Not until he had arrived at the riverside where he had killed that wild wolf yesterday did the skyline start looking a bit white. However, the valley was still a bit dim. The two moons in the sky were like two silver plates, completely round, one big, the other small. Using them as well as the stubborn stars that felt reluctant to disappear, Zhang Tai could approximately judge the paths in the valley. At this hour, most other students attending this survival training wouldn't have even gotten up, or had just done that. With the exception of Zhang Tai, no one else would appear in this place more than 10 kilometers away from the wild wolf castle for no reason. Zhang Tai ran over here from number 2 base, getting the lower part of his trousers wet from the dew on grasses and leaves in the process. He came here with his lance container on his back and dagger and long sword on his waist. Upon arriving, he squatted down at the riverside and carefully observed his surroundings to make sure that nobody else was around and that no dangerous aquatic beasts like crocodiles were in the river. After that, he came to the Red Willow, which was close to the place where he was killed by the wild wolves yesterday in the trouble reappearance scene. Next to the Red Willow, Zhang Tai put away his lance container and hung it onto the willow. Then he undid his long sword and took off his shoes, trousers, and other clothes. With a dagger in hand, he jumped into the river, nude. The river felt icy in the early morning. The moment Zhang Tai's feet touched the water, his whole body quivered, and goosebumps rose all over his skin. Damn, I must be mad, Zhang Tai mumbled and waded towards that place where he was killed by that wild wolf in the trouble reappearance scene. As the riverbed was covered with mud, when water level reached Zhang Tai's thighs, it became very difficult to move, especially for him who waded through while searching for something in the mud using his feet. That place was only 10 m away from the riverside. When he arrived there, Zhang Tai slowed his pace and slowly searched for that sharp item in the area. 5 minutes later, he finally felt the same thing that he had encountered in the mud yesterday. He tried to move it using his feet, but unexpectedly, it was very heavy. A part of it seemed to be buried in the mud. Zhang Tai carefully explored it using his feet and felt that it is shaped like an ox horn. However, it had to be heavier than that since he could not grab it out of the water using his feet. Zhang Tai threw his dagger onto the bank, then closed his eyes and took a deep breath before lowering himself into the muddy water. After touching that thing using his hands, he exerted his utmost effort to pull it out. It was very heavy, at least more than 20 kilograms in weight. It was a bit lighter in water, but after taking it out, the weight increased for Zhang Tai. There was truly something in the river, and it really seemed like an ox horn. Zhang Tai's heart pounded. Before carefully observing the item in his hand, he first washed that thing in the water to make it a bit cleaner. After that, he waded back towards the bank. When he was about to get ashore, Zhang Tai put it beneath the red willow. After landing, he found a puddle with cleaner water beside the red willow and started to clean the mud off his body. While doing so, he found 2 pieces of mud tightly stuck to his skin, which could not be washed off. Touching them, Zhang Tai was startled by their softness. It wasn't mud at all. He hurriedly beat them. However, he could not beat them off. He then pinched one, aiming to pull it off his skin. Unexpectedly, that thing kept sucking his skin even when Zhang Tai had extended its body to 10 centimeters long. Ah! Zhang Tai became restless and started to shout loudly. After increasing his pulling force, he immediately tore that soft thing off and threw it onto the ground, then did the same to the other one. Seeing them still moving on the ground while the places where he was stung had small wounds and were bleeding, Zhang Tai felt goosebumps rise all over once again. He then instantly checked his body, especially his bottom and the surroundings of his P***NIS. Thankfully, no more were found. He then hurriedly put on his clothes, finally recalling that the soft thing must be a leech. Damn, it felt more horrible being stung by leeches than being bitten by 2 huge wolves. These mollusks were really terrifying. With face turning a bit pale, Zhang Tai hurriedly put on his clothes, and carrying his lance container, long sword, and dagger, took up the ox horn-like thing from near the tree root. After confirming that nobody was around, he took a better hold of it and accelerated towards his number 1 base. Zhang Tai moved so fast that before dawn fell, he had already arrived at his number 1 base. It was a mountain cave drilled by a gold-eating boa. From the natural mark system at the entrance, he knew that neither people nor animals had entered since he had left. Reassured, Zhang Tai arrived at a hidden place inside the cave according to his memory and feeling instead of using a torch. After fixing on that marvelous arched door in his mind, Zhang Tai entered the castle of Black Iron. Handsome and magnificent castle lord, welcome to the castle of Black Iron. This was the same greetings that Zhang Tai could hear every day whenever he entered the castle of Black Iron. By the time the words started to disappear, Zhang Tai had already put down his equipment. Holding a strange ox-horn-like thing, he came to the side of the pond and squatted down. He then grabbed a handful of grass and started to clean the item using them. After cleaning off the mud using crystal spring water and grass, Zhang Tai could finally see its original look. It was an aqua-blue horn as long as 40 centimeters, with metal texture and luster, and circles of flowing cloud-shaped floral grains. Although similar to a part of a broken spearhead, Zhang Tai could confirm that it was not an ox horn. It was both beautiful and heavy, radiating unusual charm from its bright color and its texture or natural-born mysterious floral grains. Playing with the item in his hand for quite a while, Zhang Tai couldn't figure out what it was. Maybe, when I become rich and can buy a big house for my parents, I'll place it at home. Judging from its color and floral grains, it could be used as a nice ornament. Mom will love it. Thinking of this, Zhang Tai casually threw it aside. That was Zhang Tai's personality. If he couldn't figure it out now, he would never waste time on it as he could use this time to improve his current strength. Thinking of how to improve his strength, Zhang Tai thought back to what had happened in the trouble reappearance fruit. He could finally confirm that everything in there was real. Maybe trouble reappearance scene was a mirror that could reflect everything in the real world. And for a mirror, a tree was no different from a gold mountain as it was not creating but reflecting. Anything inside the mirror was just a projection from the real world. As such, since a weird item was in the mud in the real world, it also exited in the trouble reappearance scene. That was how it went. Perhaps such a weird item was nothing different from a roadside stone or a tree in the trouble reappearance scene. It just exited there, like everything else in the real world. Thinking back to the leeches sucking his blood just now, Zhang Tai suddenly thought it through. He finally understood how trouble reappearance scene worked. Besides spiritual creatures, everything inside it was no different from the real world. In the trouble reappearance scene, even if a single ant or leech doesn't appear, it's only because they weren't killed. Except for spiritual creatures, everything else that exists in the real world also appear inside, even if it had not been sensed or seen by Zhang Tai. Therefore, besides allowing Zhang Tai to fight various living beings, trouble reappearance fruit also presented him with each detail of the real world, enabling him to be familiar with the battlefield where he had fought the other living beings before. Thinking about it, if an item buried in the mud could be presented, then what couldn't? Something related to the trouble reappearance scene flashed across Zhang Tai's mind, yet he didn't catch it. He only felt a trembling inside for a split second. Scratching his head, Zhang Tai tried to remember it for a quite while, but failed. After that, he stopped bothering himself about it. The sudden discovery of the delicate link between trouble reappearance scene and the real world was already a great achievement today, so Zhang Tai was really satisfied. Therefore, he felt really excited and highly spirited. Before leaving the castle of Black Iron, he realized that his body still smelt of mud and fish. He must have not cleaned it off well at the riverside. So he took off his clothes again and took another cool bath in the pond. After cleaning himself, Zhang Tai sensed a sharp smell. Picking up his clothes, he smelled sweat on them. After counting carefully, he realized that he had not changed his clothes for over a week. Although a loner, he was still a man who had to eat, sweat, empty his bowels, and sleep. No matter how handsome the loner was, he would not look clean after wearing his clothes for over 1 week and would smell weird. So if a loner didn't wash his clothes for over a month, he then wouldn't need to hunt anymore as prey would have already been scared away by his weird odor from several hundreds meters away. Let alone prey, even people would prefer to stay at least 5 meters away from him as his weird odor would kill everything. Zhang Tai really didn't want to be a loner that smelled weird. He didn't like that, and thought that no girl would like that, either. Thankfully, Zhang Tai had prepared more than one set of clothes and shoes for this survival training. The clean clothes were in the castle of Black Iron at this time. Being naked, Zhang Tai lowered his head and stared at his fully fledged little bird. 1. Trust me, there are a great amount of girls waiting for you. For your sexy happiness, I will try my best to keep clean and cool. We will not go anywhere else this morning before washing clothes and cleaning ourselves, how about that? After saying that, Zhang Tai held his little bird and shook it in a lecherous way. At the same time, he changed his voice to a younger brother's. Fine. But I really miss Alice and Beverly these days. I want to do disgusting and terrifying things with them. I want to play with their small golden fishes, too. What should I do then? Zhang Tai changed to his own voice. Trust me, as long as I grow stronger and more powerful, they will not leave me. So they'll belong to you sooner or later. Their small golden fishes will also belong to you sooner or later. Thinking of their small golden fishes, Zhang Tai's small bird expanded immediately, seemingly waking up in a split second. Come on, then. Zhang Tai changed to the same tender voice. I will. Beauty is the source of happiness. After living alone for 1 week, Zhang Tai gradually got used to talking to himself. As long as nobody was around, he would not mind talking to his weird bird to improve his own mood and relieve his tension. If he was noticed doing this kind of weird behavior by other hypocrites, Zhang Tai's perverts and leechers' status would never be wiped off for the rest of his life. However, in the castle of Black Iron, he did not have to worry about that at all. 1. Fully fledged little bird refers to his genital covered with pubic hair. 2. Small golden fishes refer to the tongues of the girls. Chapter 134, Marching to the Crescent Prairie. In the next couple of days, Zhang Tai didn't obtain anything else, neither from that small tree nor the Wild Wolf Valley. His luck seemed to have been used up. Since saving Bonder's group by killing 5 huge wolves, and 1 common wild wolf, Zhang Tai had not met even 1 wolf in the Wild Wolf Valley for 2 consecutive days. Though he met other kinds of animals, such as boars, hares, pheasants, argali, and pangolins. He even saw a fat water badger swaggering not far from him. However, Zhang Tai didn't kill them as he was focusing on the wild wolf's 7-strength fruit, which was not even half ripe. Besides, since he had sufficient food supplies, there was no need to kill them. Zhang Tai would never kill animals for no reason. Even if it was very easy for him to kill them as told by his mom, he would not kill them because it was not necessary. He could improve his strength by killing wild wolves, however, he could get nothing from killing the weak animals, even if that boar could pose a threat to him. Several days ago, Zhang Tai had killed a huge wolf. As told by Donder, Zhang Tai had shredded its leg meat. After smoking the pieces on a pile of burning half-dried pine twigs for an entire afternoon, he hung them at the entrance of the mountain cave to dry them up. That if he had no sufficient salt and spice to deal with meat, he could keep it fresh longer by smoking and drying it. Zhang Tai then tried it and testified that it was true. To tell the truth, that smoked meat of the huge wolf tasted special really and nice. Like dried meat that had been dealt with, Zhang Tai could eat these pieces directly by cutting them off. Therefore, he had enough food. What he really needed were wild wolves. 1 month since the survival training started, in order to obtain more food, the other teams were becoming braver than before and were gradually venturing farther away from the wild wolf castle. As a result, wild wolves' living space narrowed step by step. The number of wild wolves was also decreasing, so it became more and more difficult to hunt them. From the beginning of the survival training to now, Zhang Tai estimated that over 1,000 wild wolves had been killed by people. Even if Wolf Castle was filled with them before, people could hardly see any now. Because it was more and more difficult to hunt prey, the second month of the survival training was the most testing period to the students. Thankfully, Zhang Tai had left enough food for his friends to survive the rest of the training. Compared to food, Zhang Tai feared more about Glaze's group since they might find Barley and Pandora trouble. Such a mean, vicious, and powerful guy was the most dangerous one. Blue said Glaze was even more powerful than a golden wolf. Zhang Tai assumed that perhaps Glaze had hidden his real strength to a certain degree at school. Otherwise, he must have broken through in this survival training. Generally, he preferred to regard Glaze as LV3 warrior. He should not view him as a LV2 warrior anymore. Zhang Tai knew that others would also make progress, not only he alone. Nobody would remain unchanged. Even if Charlon, Zuhair, and Garner, the lackeys of Glaze, had ignited their shrine burning point one day, Zhang Tai would not be surprised about it either. Never imagine your enemy as kind as you, never imagine your enemy as the same one that you have always known. If you violated that law, it would be very dangerous for you. Similarly, whether Glaze's group had known that one day after he would ignite the second burning point on his spine and became a LV3 warrior. Therefore, after staying in the number 2 base for another 2 days, namely 1 day before the latest leakless fruit became ripe, Zhang Tai made an important decision, marching to the Crescent Prairie. This morning, after the sun set up, Zhang Tai carried his luggage and arranged his equipment before leaving that mountain cave on the cliff. It was a sunny day with white clouds all over the sky. Based on his meticulousness as a loner and the experience that had been imparted by Blues, Zhang Tai had already explored the road last afternoon and had found a new base for himself in the border between the Wild Wolf Valley and the Crescent Prairie. As he walked forward, the terrain of the valley became increasingly broader. At the same time, the hills inside the valley gradually became sparse, the highland in the valley also became lower. As if pressed down by an invisible hand over the valley, the shrubs and arbors that Zhang Tai could see also became increasingly lower and fewer. In contrast, the amount of herbal plants gradually increased. Later, with the exception of a few shrubs among great patches of grasslands and hills, and the two high ranges extending from the valley, he could not even see a single tall arbor in the valley anymore. All this reminded Zhang Tai that he was still in the Wild Wolf Valley. However, the increasingly lower mountain ranges told him that he would exit Wild Wolf Valley not in the not-too-distant time. Such broad terrain was most dangerous to birdies who were still warriors. 1. They could hardly escape from beast attacks since the surroundings provided little to no places to aid in escaping or hiding. Because of this, Zhang Tai mainly chose to march along the mountain slope in the southeast of the Wild Wolf Valley. Road on the mountain slope was bad. Compared to the road in the valley, it would take him more time and strength to finish the same distance, but here one could easily find dangers in advance. When in dangers, one could have more terrain to make use of. What made one most reassured in the simplest way was that although no tall arbors could be seen in the valley, there were still some on the mountain slopes, which could work as the best shelter for one to escape from dangerous beast attacks. Zhang Tai had practiced climbing trees many times these days. On the way, Zhang Tai also saw some caves made by gold-eating boas. However, compared to the amount of them surrounding the Wild Wolf Castle, the closer it was to Crescent Prairie, the fewer caves of gold-eating boas there were, indicating that they posed weaker threat to other wild beasts and various mutated living beings. In other words, more dangerous living beings would exist outside. Not only dangerous living beings, even if the amount of common wild wolves would gradually increase. Naturally, the prairie was the hunting field of wolf packs. On the way, due to perfect vision angle from the mountain slope, Zhang Tai saw more and more wild wolf packs in the valley far in the distance, 2 to 3 at least, 10 at most. This made him highly spirited. He felt that the first ripe wild wolf 7-strength fruit was greeting him. All the strength of a wild wolf. Zhang Tai already heavily drooled inwardly. Help, ah? When Zhang Tai was less than 1 kilometer away from the base that he had chosen after trekking for an entire morning, a wind from Crescent Prairie brought a shout for helps and groans into Zhang Tai's ears. In the beginning, he thought it was just his imagination since he had not met a person the entire morning. But several steps further, Zhang Tai heard the voice once again. This time he realized that it was not his mind playing tricks on him, but a real voice coming from up ahead. Hell, P. Zhang Tai immediately pulled out of a lance from his lance container. Bowing his body, he became careful and walked forward stealthily. Less than 20 m ahead, he saw the guy who was seeking help in a weak voice. At first sight, that guy was lying on the ground, but Zhang Tai didn't go there. Instead, he squatted down and carefully searched the surroundings to confirm that there were no traps or ambushes set, and that the guy was not pretending to be wounded. Only then did Zhang Tai stood up and ran towards him. Since he was born, Zhang Tai had seen many unlucky guys. However, this one today must have the worst luck of them all. Even Doug was not this unlucky. How bad did one's luck have to be that he would step onto a bear trap set by another person? On the grassland at the foot of the mountain ahead, a pioneer was lying on the ground while a basin-sized bear trap was gripping his left shin. As a result, bloodstains could be seen everywhere on the ground and his trousers. Some of them being from that unlucky guy, while the rest were from 2 wolves lying dead on the ground. Zhang Tai walked over and found that guy was still with closed eyes, face as white as paper. He was at the edge of spiritual collapse, only having the last breath to say help, using all his efforts and groan once in a while. Firstly, Zhang Tai checked the blood stains on the beast clip and his wounds. Judging from the dark blood stains and gore, Zhang Tai knew that it had happened more than 10 hours ago. That unlucky guy's shin was directly broken by the bear trap, while the 2 rows of saw teeth were tightly biting into his flesh. At the sight of the wounds, Zhang Tai was really shocked. After checking his wounds, Zhang Tai moved his eyes onto the 2 dead wild wolves. After simply touching their stiffness, Zhang Tai only gained more proof for his initial thought: this unlucky guy was lying here since last night. Zhang Tai could even imagine what had happened here at that time. That guy must have wandered into the Wild Wolf Valley last night out of some reason and absent-mindedly stepped onto such a disgusting bear trap. As a result, he fell down and screamed miserably, which attracted the 2 wild wolves. Thankfully, he killed them. After that, he just lay on the ground overnight. Fortunately, he was still alive until now, although only with the last wisp of breath. Zhang Tai looked around and found nobody else. That guy just lay there alone. At the same time, some black points were flying high in the sky, eagles or vultures. If he didn't save him today, this guy would hardly live through tonight. He might be eaten before dusk. On the way here, Zhang Tai had seen more than one wild wolf wandering around. Judging from this guy's current situation, he would definitely be killed by another attacker, whoever it was. Hell, almost in a coma, that guy mumbled once again. Wordless, Zhang Tai scratched his head and glanced at that 20 or so years old face again. He then thought back to how his mom had cried at the sight of the photo of his eldest brother and sighed. I will help you. After taking off his luggage and lance container, Zhang Tai put them on the grass to the side and carefully helped that guy sit up. He kept the stranger's upper body straight and let him sit close to his legs. After that, he carefully took away the dagger from the guy's hand. He didn't want to be scratched by accident when the guy regained consciousness. If that happened, he himself would be the most unlucky guy. After one night's struggle and losing a great amount of blood, that guy looked like white paper, and his lips were covered with white rips like crops that had not been watered for several years. Lifting him up with one hand, Zhang Tai took off his kettle from his waist and opened its lid. He then moved that kettle close to that guy's mouth and let him sip a mouthful of water. The water inside the kettle originated from the quality mountain spring in the castle of Black Iron. This was the best water that Zhang Tai had ever drunk since he was born. It was crystal clear, sweet, and smooth. From the moment he drank a mouthful of this kind of water, he had kept drinking it the past few days. Only 10 seconds after sipping a mouthful of water, that guy's vitality and instincts seemed to have been reawoken. He started to murmur out of consciousness, water, water, water. Zhang Tai then slowly fed him more, afraid of him suffocating if he took too much. After drinking several mouthfuls of water, the guy's throat started to quiver. Then, he started to drink faster. Not until he finished drinking half of the water in the kettle did Zhang Tai move it away from his lips, waiting for him to recover his physical strength and consciousness. Only after 1 minute did this guy finally open his eyes. After glancing at Zhang Tai, he immediately closed his eyes. More than 10 seconds later, he opened his eyes once again. Meeting Zhang Tai's eyes once again, he slowly uttered in a hoarse voice, "Thank you." Seeing that guy recovering his consciousness a bit and already knowing that Zhang Tai had helped him, Zhang Tai finally let out a sigh. If he could wake up, everything could be easily dealt with. Besides opening his eyes, judging from his raising chest, this guy could also breathe a bit more smoothly now. So his life might have been saved. Like teachers had said, water was really the source of life which could never be replaced. Without water, no living beings could survive. Letting him sit against his leg, Zhang Tai planned to let him recover his physical strength for a bit. Only after 2 minutes, the guy seemed to have recovered some more. Do you have some more water? Zhang Tai then passed his kettle. This time, the guy could already hold the kettle by himself. While he was gulping down the water, Zhang Tai flicked the kettle at the guy's waist over. The empty sound drifted in his ears, making him speechless again. What an unlucky guy. After finishing drinking his water, he then stepped onto a bear trap, and had struggled for the whole night. No wonder he was so thirsty. 1 is a warrior until LV6. After that, he would be a fighter, then a knight. Chapter 135, Saving People. Sitting on the ground, the guy soon bottomed up Zhang Tai's kettle. He didn't mind that. While the guy was heavily breathing after drinking up the water, Zhang Tai found he was even a bit younger than he had speculated before. The dirt covering his face and the mustache that had not been shaved for many days caused him to look several years older. Actually, he was just a bit older than 20 years old. After taking his empty kettle back, Zhang Tai asked, "Can you eat something now? I think it would help you recover as soon as possible." Hearing this, the guy nodded and started to reach for something at his waist. Seeing him taking out compressed dried rations from his small leather bag, Zhang Tai stopped him. "Eat mine. Compressed dried rations cannot provide you enough heat. It could never match meat. Can you sit up by yourself now?" The guy nodded and struggled to sit up, supporting himself by placing his hands on the ground. During this movement, he slightly moved the bear trap that had bitten onto his shin, and cold sweat could be seen once again forming on his forehead. However, he gritted his teeth and remained silent. Seeing him gritting his teeth and sitting up alone, Zhang Tai nodded inwardly. One who dared to wander in the wild wolf valley at midnight truly was a tough man. "Sit here, I will give some food for you." After saying this, Zhang Tai walked towards the bamboo-woven cage that contained the dried meat of the huge wolf. When Zhang Tai turned away, the eyes of the guy sitting on the ground immediately became sharp. He rapidly peered at the dagger that had been thrown aside by Zhang Tai and glanced over Zhang Tai with alert eyes. During this process, he took in every details about Zhang Tai, including his age, height, physique, clothes, weapons, and his luggage that contained his sleeping bag. Nothing on Zhang Tai could escape from his eyes. After doing this, the guy winked, seemingly thinking about something. After that, he slumped down while the alertness in his eyes disappeared. Zhang Tai, who had turned away to get food for him, didn't know the thoughts that had flashed across the man behind him. The dried meat of the huge wolf was put into a bamboo-woven schoolbag-sized food container that could be fixed on his waist, which was a necessity in survival training in the wild. The cages were woven by girls in the wild wolf castle using bamboo and reeds, which worked the best. Although Zhang Tai could access the castle of black iron at any time, he didn't want himself to look too special. So for basic belongings and food, he preferred to carry them on his person. Even in the wild, Zhang Tai didn't like to casually access Castle of Black Iron without necessity, since it would increase the risk of exposing his biggest secret. Additionally, his strength could increase by carrying these items with him. Zhang Tai took out a smoked jerky of the huge wolf. The guy didn't pick at the food, nor did he say polite words. Instead, he directly took it and engulfed it. After that, he rested for another several minutes, during which he greatly improved both spiritually and physically. "Thank you for saving my life. If not for you, I would have hardly survived this night." Although still weak, the guy still seriously stared at Zhang Tai with his cyan eyes. "Please let me know my savior's name." "I'm Zhang Tai. Are you a student attending survival training in the Wild Wolf Valley?" "Yes." Zhang Tai looked at him, not feeling it improper to tell him his status as a student attending the survival training. Since there were many students attending the training all over the Wild Wolf Valley, it was no secret. "What's your name?" "I'm Salve. Few people are as unlucky as you." Zhang Tai looked at the bear trap on Salve's shin. "How do you feel now? Have you recovered a bit?" "I cannot open it by myself. I'm afraid if I can't open it and let it close up again, you will suffer a greater pain." "It seems like you've already tried it by yourself." Salve's pale face looked a bit embarrassed. "It would take a LV5 strength to open it alone, my strength is not big enough." Last night, Salve had already tried twice to open it by himself. However, the result was the one that Zhang Tai had mentioned. He could not open it and had no choice but to let it close up again, only causing him to suffer more pain. There are too many pioneers coming to the Crescent Prairie to hunt for golden wolves and pick gooseneck grass. There's no way to know who had set the bear trap here. Zhang Tai looked at Salve full of sympathy. "Are you here to hunt golden wolves and pick up gooseneck grass too? Why did you come over here to the Wild Wolf Valley? There are no golden wolves or gooseneck grasses here." After going blank for seconds, Salve replied to eliminate Zhang Tai's doubt. "It was dark, and I wasn't familiar with the terrain." Zhang Tai didn't doubt it after hearing the explanation. If it was not for the two items, why else would anyone wander into the Wild Wolf Valley and the Crescent Prairie? Picking up wolves *T? Blues said many pioneers had arrived at the Crescent Prairie these days and Salve must be one of them. Based on his own life experiences, Zhang Tai didn't realize that Salve was escaping from his doubt. So he thought that Salve had just admitted his purpose here. After resting for a couple of minutes, Salve's face regained some color. He nodded towards Zhang Tai to indicate that he was ready to open it together with Zhang Tai. "You don't need to rest more?" Zhang Tai asked, a bit worried about him. "No more, this time, we two might be able to deal with it." "Fine, hope we can succeed." On the steel bars with saw teeth on both sides were a row of round holes. Such a design was to relieve the weight of the bear trap, and was convenient for one to open it. Since Salve had expressed that he could do it, Zhang Tai said nothing more. He then held the bear trap using his hands, allowing Salve to move his foot to another direction and lift up his knee so that they could use their efforts to open it together. After inserting their fingers into the round holes, they exchanged glances and nodded at the same time. "After I count to 3, let's do it together," Zhang Tai said. Salve nodded and took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, go! The two used all their strength to pull the bear trap open, and the saw teeth started to leave Salve's shin. When the saw teeth were pulled out of Salve's wounds, Zhang Tai felt Salve's body quiver all over. At the same time, Salve's strength became weaker, causing the bear trap's force on his side to increase abruptly. Zhang Tai instantly shouted, "Stand it, come on." Zhang Tai's face turned red while Salve's face increasingly turned paler. Sweat drops formed on their foreheads at the same time. Soon after that, the huge mouth of the bear trap slowly opened again. Right now, when Salve's shin could be fully pulled out of the beast clip, without Zhang Tai prompting, Salve used his last energy to pull his leg back and get it out of the huge mouth of the bear trap. After that, they loosened their hands at the same time. With a sound of caw, the bear trap closed once again. Just after such a short exercise, the two were so tired that they sat on the ground, breathing heavily. The jaws of this bear trap were really powerful. The moment the trap left Salve's shin, the wounds torn open by the saw teeth bled once again. However, this time, the blood looked a bit dark. After tearing off the part of trousers covering Salve's shin, Zhang Tai found that the lower part of Salve's shin was swollen like a turnip and looked black and shiny due to the gore. After poking it using his finger, Zhang Tai found that the pioneer didn't feel it at all. Salve also noticed this. He tried it by himself and realized that he could feel no pain on the shin beneath the wounds. Naturally, he knew what this meant. His face twitched once again. "If we don't deal with it at once, your shin might have to be cut off then," Zhang Tai solemnly said to Salve. Salve's eyes became brighter hearing Zhang Tai's words, and he hurriedly asked, "You could deal with it? I've heard about it from others. As it will touch your broken bones and wounds, it might be very painful. I don't know if you'll be able to stand it or not. Come on." Salve gritted his teeth. "Fine, you have to stand it. In your case, it's more important to make your blood near the wounds flow smoothly than wrapping them. I have to let the dead blood flow out in case of further damaging your shin." Zhang Tai couldn't be sure of success, but Donder had told him that this was the only method at this time. Yet, it was really his first time attempting something like this. Salve nodded seriously. Zhang Tai pitched the part beneath Salve's knee using his hands and pushed downwards along the wounds like pushing out milk. The moment Zhang Tai increased his strength, Salve's eyes popped out. After a loud scream, he stopped Zhang Tai. "Wait for a moment, please." Zhang Tai looked at him and stopped. Salve heavily gasped for air, a bit embarrassed. "Can you fetch me a stick so that I can bite into it?" 30 seconds later, Salve bit into a stick fetched by Zhang Tai. Seeing Salve having prepared, and nodding, Zhang Tai continued. This time, Salve didn't scream. Instead, his whole body started to tremble repetitively and twist like a fish thrown onto a stone to dry under the sunshine. No matter what, Zhang Tai didn't stop, since his actions wouldn't kill the pioneer. So although he was a bit hesitant at the beginning, he moved faster and more ferociously as time went by. Several minutes later, the blood in Salve's shin could finally, smoothly flow downwards, and looked normal. However, Salve looked as if he was scooped out of water, wet all over. "Is it done?" Salve asked when he felt Zhang Tai stop. He felt like he'd just survived hell itself. "It's done." Zhang Tai patted his hands. Hearing the words, Salve revealed a brilliant smile of one who had survived a great trouble. "I've finished the preparations. Now we'll officially start it." Hearing Zhang Tai's words, Salve rolled up his eyes and fell backwards. "Ah, why did you pass out? You really have poor willpower." Zhang Tai shook his head and started to recover Salve's senses in his shin. First, he still needed to eliminate the dirty blood in the shin, only then could the fresh blood flow in, and Salve's shin start recovering. Together with fresh blood would be fresh energy and nutrients that could recover vitality in the muscles and nerves. He could push away the dirty blood like how he pushed milk. However, Salve's wounds were above his shin. Therefore, the dirty blood could not flow out by itself just like a dead pond. Over one night, it might have already conglomerate in the vessels of his shin, causing it to be more difficult to push it upwards. Thinking of Donder's guidance, Zhang Tai then took out his dagger and opened 2 wounds of medium depth along the direction of muscle fiber in Salve's shin before starting to push hard on his shin. With his efforts, the black, dirty blood started to constantly flow out of the wounds on Salve's shin. At first, the dirty blood being pushed out was black, then it turned purple-black, purple-red, and finally recovered to normal red. At that time, the black, bright swollen shin also gradually recovered to normal due to Zhang Tai's hard work. After all this, Zhang Tai pulled out some his medicine for healing wounds and pasted it onto Salve's injuries. Stimulated by the medicine, Salve gradually woke up. Opening his eyes, he saw Zhang Tai still working on his wounds, while the lower part of his shin felt a bit painful. Salve almost started crying. It was the first time he thought that it was very nice to feel pain. 20 minutes later, Zhang Tai re-embarked on his path. However, this time, compared to that 1 hour ago, he had a companion, bad luck Salve. Salve was both weak and embarrassed. Jumping on one foot, he supported himself with a branch fetched by Zhang Tai with one hand while the other was wrapped around Zhang Tai's neck. The two slowly walked towards the border between the Wild Wolf Valley and the Crescent Prairie. Salve said he had several more companions in the border, so he only requested Zhang Tai to accompany him back to his base. Now that Zhang Tai had saved his life, he naturally would not just leave him alone, especially since the man could not even move freely. With the belief to be a good man and help people for as long as it was necessary, Zhang Tai gritted his teeth and carried his luggage once again. He promised Salve to send him back to his base to meet his companions. According to him, they were just 3 to 5 kilometers away from Zhang Tai's base. It won't take me too long time to come back after sending him back to his base. Thinking this, Zhang Tai agreed and considered it a good way to become more familiar with the surrounding terrain. Chapter 136, An Almost Death. They started during noon and finally completed the less than 10 kilometers journey right before sunset. Due to Salve's weakness, they had to rest several times on the way. If it wasn't for the items Zhang Tai had to carry, he would have taken Salve on his back. He still considered it for a couple of times. Besides Salve, Zhang Tai had without hesitation taken that bear trap. He had put it onto his package, which added more than 5 kilograms to the already sizable weight on his back. Seeing the metal contraption, Salve kept gritting his teeth. Zhang Tai asked Salve whether he would take the bear trap himself. Naturally, Salve was not able to take it, so Zhang Tai owned it. Facing the pioneer's dubious eyes, he had explained that he could obtain about 20 silver coins by selling it in Black Hot City. Hearing his words, Salve didn't doubt him but felt speechless. In truth, Zhang Tai admitted it only to himself, but he was actually thinking about setting up Glaze and his lackeys using this bear trap. Salve's poor look brought an evil scene to his mind, Glaze or one of his lackeys gripped by those metal jaws like Salve had been, and rolling around on the ground. If it happened, Zhang Tai would feel much better. So he decided to carry it on his back. The distance they had to travel tested Zhang Tai's endurance more than his physical strength. When they reached the foot of the mountain, they moved only a bit faster than a tortoise. Thankfully Salve expected to soon meet his companions around here, so except for necessary short rests, he had no mood to do anything else. Additionally, they weren't unfortunate enough to meet any beasts on the way, enabling them to arrive at the base where Salve's companions stayed before sunset. The base was on the other side of the range, which extended out of the Wild Wolf Valley. If this range of dozens of kilometers in length was regarded as a bitter gourd, on the top of this bitter gourd would be the border between the Wild Wolf Valley and the Crescent Prairie. Zhang Tai stayed on the left side atop this bitter gourd while Salve's companions stayed on the right top side of this bitter gourd. Once passing through the top of the bitter gourd, the two places were not far from each other. The birch forest in front is where we should meet up. Pointing at the birch forest on the hillside ahead, Salve increased his pace with one arm over Zhang Tai's neck. Seeing the target, Zhang Tai also let out a sigh, thinking about being able to come back to his own base before dusk. After entering the birch forest with Salve for less than 50 m, Zhang Tai abruptly felt goosebumps all over his neck. Without hesitation, he immediately rolled away. The moment Zhang Tai rolled away, a blade flashed through the air, passing the place where he had stood moments before. There was a shadow sliding down from a birch. Realizing that he had not hit Zhang Tai, he chased after him, aiming to attack him once again. "Stop, Miller!" Salve shouted out loudly. With the luggage on his back, Zhang Tai's flexibility was restricted. That shadow moved faster than him. So overburdened, Zhang Tai moved like a tortoise. After 2 rolls on the ground, he pulled out his lance, but that guy's blade had already come close to his neck. If it wasn't for Salve who had shouted stop, Zhang Tai believed he would have definitely had his neck sliced. Looking at his lance, he found that he could at most pierce through his opponent's abdomen. The outcome would be that the shadow guy would be heavily wounded, yet he himself would have kicked the bucket. That guy called Miller had never imagined that Zhang Tai could respond so fast. He didn't consider that Zhang Tai might be able to pull out his lance and prepare to pierce through his abdomen by the time he moved his blade close to his neck. The moment Salve shouted, the two people stopped at the same time. The tense atmosphere eased down somewhat. However, Zhang Tai and Miller goggled at each other without putting their weapons down. Only after a few seconds, Zhang Tai's back was drenched with sweat. After Huck and Snade, this was his second time coming this close to dying. "Brat, I will count to 3. If you don't put down your weapon, my bow will definitely open a big hole in your neck, cooling you off." 20 m away, another person in a gray cloak stood up from the shrubs with a bow in hand, an arrow nocked and ready to go. The sharp triangular arrowhead was targeted at Zhang Tai's neck from 20 m away. Zhang Tai felt goosebumps all over his neck once again. "Harley, put down your bow. He saved me, so I let him accompany me back. Without him, I might not have even been able to return." After saying that, Salve shouted at Miller again, "Miller, you cur, before you chop people, won't you tell me first?" After exchanging glances, Miller and Harley seemed to notice the wounds on Salve's shin and that crutch made of a branch. They then moved away their weapons. "Hey, Brat, it's really surprising how fast you moved. Miller laughed out loudly without caring about what he had almost done to Zhang Tai just now. Putting the long machete back into its holder, he then stretched out his hands towards Zhang Tai, who was still lying on the ground. Zhang Tai didn't pull on his hands but picked himself up from the ground without saying anything. Seeing this, Miller just shrugged his shoulders. During the short time of their confrontation, more than 10 people rushed out of the birch forest with weapons in hands. Supported by his clutch, Salve immediately moved forward and murmured something to one of the group of people while pointing at Zhang Tai. Hearing his explanation, they then put their weapons back and walked peacefully towards Zhang Tai. Since the group of people had rushed out of the birch forest, Zhang Tai's eyes jumped. Although they looked like pioneers, he felt that it wasn't true. He didn't know how, but he felt that these people were dangerous as their alert and wondering eyes made him uncomfortable. "You saved Salve?" A 30-odd-years man walked towards Zhang Tai as he put away his weapon. The newcomer looked thin, with an unclean beard. He had a pair of sharp, eagle-like eyes. They reminded Zhang Tai of the magistrates squatting in the corners of the walls near the railway station of Black Hot City, fixating their eyes on those orphans who only focused on passers-by's purses on their waists. This made Zhang Tai uncomfortable too. "Yes, I saved Salve." Saying this, he put away his lance. "Few students dare to come to the Crescent Prairie for survival training," the man noted, trying to figure out who Zhang Tai really was. "There are 3 students from the Wild Wolf Castle who dare to attend the Loner's survival training here, and I am one of them," Zhang Tai replied with some pride. At the same time, he noticed that the man walking towards him exchanged glances with Miller, who slightly nodded, seemingly admitting Zhang Tai's strength. "No matter what, since you saved Salve, we should thank you." The man slightly changed his attitude. "What do you need? If you have any wishes, just tell us, we will try our best to satisfy you." The man spoke so directly. "No need. Salve has returned to your place, so I will leave then." Zhang Tai refused his proposal and looked at Salve again. "See you next time." Knowing Zhang Tai was going to leave, Salve opened his mouth, yet didn't utter a sound. Waving his hands, Zhang Tai then strode out of the birch forest. Under the other people's gaze, he started to trot along the path he had come from. Those people just silently watched him disappear before moving away their eyes. "Trust me, as long as he's in Black Hot City, you'll have a chance to thank him," the archer Harley, who was standing nearby, comforted Salve by patting his shoulder. After moving back his eyes, Salve revealed a smile. "Head, this brat is not bad," he responded so fast. "But he's narrow-minded." Hearing Miller's judgment, Salve glared at him once again. "If he hadn't responded fast, he'd be long ago chopped down by you." That man with a pair of sharp eyes like those of an eagle kept watching Zhang Tai until he disappeared in the distance. He then turned back and asked, "Salve, how about it now?" Salve knew that the man was not concerning about his wounds. Hearing his words, he said nothing else but pulled out a metal cylinder from his coat and passed it over. "I've already mapped the terrain of the Wild Wolf Valley and figured out the situation there. The team of soldiers residing in the Wild Wolf Castle have already left 1 month ago. Therefore, the Wild Wolf Castle is the base of a group of Boy Scouts. There are less than 10 people above LV6 in the castle. The highest fighting force is below LV9. The fighters are all teachers and instructors from the schools in Black Hot City. Additionally, the city defense equipment in the castle can only perform to 40% of its maximal force under the manipulation of the students. The predominant boiler in the castle has not been used." Hearing Salve's information, that man opened the metal cylinder and took out the map inside. He nodded slightly, then put the map back and immediately declared several orders without in the blink of an eye. "You have 5 minutes to prepare, we'll move at once." Hearing his order, everybody hurriedly moved. "Doge, prepare the message Falcon to connect with the headquarters. Zola, check horses." After saying that, the man remembered Salve's wounds. He glanced at the injured leg roughly bound by twig-made splints and asked Salve, "Can you still ride?" "Yes," Salve replied with gritted teeth. The man nodded. 5 minutes after Zhang Tai had left the birch forest, more than 10 horses galloped out of the place. After a short while, they had already disappeared in the horizon northeast, the border of the Crescent Prairie. Chapter 137, You Are Cute. Not until roughly 3 kilometers away from Salve and his companions did Zhang Tai find them abnormal. If you saw a shoal of golden fish swimming in order in the pond, you would also feel it abnormal. Similarly, compared to the other pioneers that Zhang Tai had met before, he felt these were too disciplined and good at teamwork. He knew from experience that all pioneers were free-willed. They would form teams sometimes for common benefits, but if you made a comparison between a real pioneers team with Salve's group, you would see the difference at once. No matter how many real pioneers gathered together, they were just a pile of sand, however, Zhang Tai felt that Salve's group was a brick, a shoal of golden fish that could swim in order. This made him feel strange. Although they looked unusual, Zhang Tai didn't think too much. He didn't have that strong of a curiosity to try figuring it out. He believed that everyone had their own secrets. If it had nothing to do with him, he would prefer to ignore them. Who were those guys had nothing to do with Zhang Tai. What really concerned him was that swift attack from Miller the moment he had entered the birch woods. What if Salve didn't shout out at that time? What if that guy in the shrubs had also followed up Miller by shooting him with an arrow? Then, at that moment, he might have become a corpse. Zhang Tai really couldn't accept this. What made him most offended was that he had survived these ifs. What if the if came true one day? Would he then be killed in such an easy way? Would he then become a corpse? Would he then let his parents suffer like what his eldest brother had done? After that event of Huck and Snade, Zhang Tai became afraid of death. What was death? Was it endless darkness? Every time he thought of this, the fear would arise from his inner heart. Did his own fate have to be determined by so many ifs concerning others? Never! Zhang Tai looked calm while running, but he was screaming inside. No one can determine my fate except for me, no one. If only those really powerful can determine their own fate in this world, then I will choose to be that powerful. I will choose to be more and more powerful. That misunderstanding in the birch forest just now was nothing serious to Salve's group. After all, Zhang Tai had left there safely. However, Salve's group didn't know that just because of that trivial thing in their eyes, Zhang Tai swore to become a really powerful man so that he would have the ability to control his own fate and life or death. The 15-year-old youth finally awakened at this moment, with his heart pounding fiercely. Only by becoming a really powerful man could he let his parents live a comfortable life. Only by becoming a really powerful man could he stop his beloved woman from leaving him. Only by becoming a really powerful man could he master his own fate and prevent others from killing him like a dog. This was why Zhang Tai wanted to be powerful. It was neither groundbreaking nor great. It was even a bit selfish. However, that was how Zhang Tai really thought. Additionally, these selfish thoughts gradually made him highly spirited. He started to feel really energetic to strive forward. Zhang Tai then quickened his pace. There were only 4 to 5 km from that birch woods to Zhang Tai's own base. It only took him a bit more than 10 minutes to arrive there by running. However, Zhang Tai had never imagined that he would meet a friend there. When he arrived at the mountain cave, both him and that guy in the mountain cave became stunned. "Is that you?" Two voices shouted out in unison before bursting out laughing. It was Blues. Similar to their last meeting, they just exchanged their roles this time. Blues had already used the firewood and grasses fetched by Zhang Tai to burn a fire, and was roasting a savory hare, while Zhang Tai was the one to rush in from outside. "Is this your base?" Blues asked. "Of course." Zhang Tai put down his luggage. "That's my firewood and grasses, haha. You're really brave to choose your base here. This place is already very close to the Crescent Prairie," Blues said in awe. "I didn't dare to choose such a close place my first time here." "Crescent Prairie? I've just come back from the border over there." Zhang Tai couldn't wait to sit near Blues, since he could smell a thick aroma of the roasted hare. He never imagined that Blues was this good at cooking. "What were you doing there?" Blues asked out of curiosity. He then noticed that huge bear trap on his luggage. Blues then picked himself up from the ground near the fire and walked over. Taking up the trap, he took a careful look. "There are blood stains on it. How did you get this stuff?" Zhang Tai then told Blues about what had happened to Salve. Of course, he just briefed it. At noon, when he was coming towards here, he met a pioneer caught in a bear trap. He then sent the pioneer back to his base to converge with his partners before coming back. As for others, Zhang Tai ignored them all as he felt that it was not necessary to share his own boredom and mental experiences with Blues. Blues really enjoyed Zhang Tai's story. The hare was almost cooked as well, and fat enough for 2 people to enjoy it. Neither of them hesitated. They just both took out their daggers and started to cut off the meat and enjoy it. At the same time, they started to talk about what had happened in the past couple of days. What Blues revealed finally confirmed Zhang Tai's presumption. Glaze had already become a LV3 warrior and the first one among all the horny students. He became very well known all over the Wild Wolf Castle. Hearing this news, Zhang Tai was not too amazed. When Blues told him Glaze was the only student who had entered LV3 among all the students attending this survival training, he just mumbled inwardly, "He won't be the only one by tomorrow." Another leafless fruit on the small tree would become ripe by next day. "What about you? Have you prepared your tools?" Last time when Zhang Tai had met Blues, the other had expressed that he would like to go back to the Wild Wolf Castle to prepare some items so as to pick up gooseneck grass. Blues felt that it was very difficult to capture a live golden wolf and take it to the wild wolf castle 30 kilometers away as an archer, so he targeted the gooseneck grass, which was also very valuable. However, if one wanted to pick up gooseneck grass, he had to own a plant storage container or a special herbal container. Gooseneck grass was very tender, its neck and roots very fragile and easily broken. If one was careless, he would break or damage it, and once broken or damaged, its effects would greatly reduce, resulting in a low price. So one should never put it casually among luggage. One had to pull this stuff out of the soil together with its root. The better preserve it was from its root to its neck, the more valuable it was. Zhang Tai didn't see any container on Blues or in the mountain cave that could be used to hold gooseneck grass. I'm looking for someone to make the containers. Speaking of this, I have to thank you. When I went to the iron melting workshop to look for someone to make a medicinal spade for me, hearing that I was invited by you, the guys didn't even want my compensation. Blues said with a big smile. No matter what, such a feeling of being cared by friends everywhere would be a great feeling for anyone, especially a weird recluse like Blues. This might have even been his first time experiencing this kind of care by others. Pleasure, those guys in the iron melting workshop are easy to get along with. If you feel embarrassed, you can just let someone take a wild wolf back to those guys for you if you have any surplus. Seeing the wolf, they'll definitely treat you as their bosom brother. Fine, got it. Blues nodded seriously. So why did you come back before preparing well? After saying this, Zhang Tai felt Blues was staring at him weirdly. Scratching his own face, he asked again, what? Was my question weird? Have you not heard it? Blues asked weirdly. Hear what? Wolves connival. What's that? Zhang Tai felt like he was becoming rustic. The 2 moons in the sky control the mating time of the wolves. When the 2 become full moons, the wolves' mating time begins, lasting 1 month, 3 times a year. When the first night of the full moons arrives, a large amount of wolves will gather together and howl up at them like holding a ceremony. So this day was called Wolves' Carnival. Blues didn't notice that when he explained it, Zhang Tai's eyes became brighter at once. There are 2 full moons tonight? Yes. Will there be a lot of wolves? Many. I heard someone saying he saw thousands of wild wolves howling up to the full moons. But our strength doesn't allow us to venture deep into the crescent prairie. Last time when I wandered around here, I found a safe place near where a large group of wild wolves would gather together at night. If my assumption is right, we could enjoy the scene of the wild wolves howling to the full moons. Blues said with a delighted look. Zhang Tai's eyes were not just bright this time. Instead, they had become extremely brilliant, like 2 burning lanterns. Blues. What? Feeling Zhang Tai's voice becoming strange, he, who was tearing off a hare's leg, turned his head and found Zhang Tai with his eyes fixated on him, causing him to be startled. Did someone say you were cute? After saying this, Zhang Tai heard a sound of pie-paw from the burning firewood. Blue's hand shook, and he almost dropped his hare's leg onto the ground. No. Blues forcefully swallowed his saliva and replied before moving a bit farther away from Zhang Tai out of self-preservation. His were looked weird, and Blues started to wonder if Zhang Tai had a special hobby related to soap. 1. In the mountain cave where only 2 men were inside, Blues abruptly felt goosebumps rise all over his skin. You are cute. Zhang Tai said seriously. In the mountain cave where only 2 men were inside, seeing Zhang Tai's gleaming eyes, Blue's face immediately turned white, and he dropped his hare's leg onto the ground. 1. A special hobby related to soap refers to homosexuality. When 2 men fall in love with each other and prepare to make love, one would bend over like picking up a soap. Chapter 138, Wolf Pack howling at the full moons. In the sky, the 2 moons were as round as wheels, one big, one small. Their brilliance scattered all over the ground, causing numerous stars to lose their shine. Even everything on the ground seemed like it was covered with silver. The crescent prairie at this moment looked magnificent, vast, mysterious, and endless. Under the moonlight, the swaying grass in the distance was changing its shape, bringing Zhang Tai a sense of a sea wave moving across the land. At the sight of the 2 full moons in the sky and a vast prairie on the ground, most people would abruptly feel broad-minded and lose all their distracting thoughts. Since he was born as full moons appeared every 4 months, Zhang Tai had already watched them dozens of times. He thought them very beautiful, and he would have appreciated the view over a windowsill. However, today he felt that it was more beautiful than ever before. Of course, what was the most beautiful was the increasing number of wild wolves in the valley. When it reached 30, Zhang Tai knew that his wild wolf 7-strength fruit will get ripe tonight. Perhaps because of the nice scenery, the ferocious look of the wild wolves became cute in Zhang Tai's eyes as he thought the wolves' carnival was a grand party themed for mating. He heard some rich people in Black Hot City usually held these kind of parties at home, it was unknown whether they had learned it from wolves. Thinking of mating, unknowingly, with his eyes fixed onto the two moons of different sizes, a bashful thought flashed across Zhang Tai's mind. Such plump, round, and bright moons reminded him of the breasts of Miss Dana and Alice. The bigger one belonged to Miss Dana while the smaller one was Alice's. After an estimation using his eyes, Zhang Tai found that they were truly similar in size. Although Alice's and Beverly's boobs were comparatively large among girls, compared to that of Miss Dana's, they were still smaller. Seeing Zhang Tai stretch out his hands and pinched his fingers towards the two moons with a weird smile, Blues, lying on the ground nearby, immediately quivered and silently moved a bit farther away from Zhang Tai. When the moons rose above their heads, the number of wild wolves in the valley gradually increased to roughly 70, which greatly surpassed Zhang Tai's ability to deal with in one go. If he just jumped into a pack of rutting wild wolves, Zhang Tai was certain that he would definitely be killed miserably. The night wind from the prairie also brought the smell of wild wolves in the valley. With the increasing numbers, howls could gradually be heard one by one and the entire valley became their meeting place. There must be a way. There must be a way. When some wild wolves started to growl, Zhang Tai rapidly racked his mind, glancing over the valley beneath, not letting any detail go. If he was surrounded by 70 wild wolves at the same time, he would definitely lose his life. What method can I use to avoid being besieged by so many wild wolves at the same time? He could only use terrain, allowing wild wolves to not be able to besiege him. Finally, at the sight of a crack extending from the ravine at the bottom to the cliff upwards 70 m away, Zhang Tai shouted inwardly, "Gold help me." That crack was more than 10 m in height, the top of which was on the cliff where Zhang Tai and Blues were lying. Like it was split by a huge axe, the entire crack was about 20 m deep and in the shape of a wedge. The wider place outside was 5 to 6 m, while the deeper it went inside, the narrower it got before closing off entirely. Noticing this, a thought flashed across Zhang Tai's mind. He then thought up a brave plan. He hit Blues' shoulder. Blues felt uneasy, and in response, slowly moved aside. "Blues. What? I need your help tonight. I owe you one for tonight." Zhang Tai lowered his voice. "I will not do weird things." Blues hurriedly replied. Not knowing why, Zhang Tai felt that Blues was a bit nervous tonight, but he didn't think too much on it. "Have you seen the crack that extends downwards along the cliff?" Zhang Tai pointed at the place. "Yeah. How do you feel about that crack? Whether it is stubborn and sexy?" Blues felt goosebumps all over. Widely opening his eyes, he asked Zhang Tai, "What do you want?" "I have a plan, a very interesting plan. I need your help." "What plan?" Blues swallowed his saliva. At this time, he had already determined that once Zhang Tai said something disgusting, he would leave, and the farther the better. Zhang Tai licked his lips, causing Blues to quiver once again. "After a while, I will go down from there and enjoy the carnival together with the wild wolves. You can keep an eye on the scene. If I cannot stand it anymore, you need to hold the wolves back so that I can climb up once again. As long as I can stand it, you just watch." Zhang Tai revealed his plan, which was actually not a plan at all since he was planning to just fight the wild wolves by force. If he couldn't stand it and would like to escape, he would ask for Blues' help, who'd cover him with his bow and arrows. Such a sharp, unexpected reply stunned Blues for quite a while. He couldn't understand why Zhang Tai would do this crazy thing at all. Why would Zhang Tai celebrate the carnival together with the wild wolves? The word carnival caught Blues' imagination. A people with 70 rutting wolves? Happy? Did it mean that he would even *ck wolves? That was too terrible. Blues was slightly shocked, feeling that Zhang Tai was already as terrible as prehistoric beasts. Seeing Blues' silence, Zhang Tai mistook it, especially that bit of shock in Blues' eyes, as his consent, which pleased him. At this moment, Zhang Tai felt that he should be slightly modest. After exploding some of their anus, the wild wolves will definitely be driven crazy. I hope they can come in a queue. If they want to come for me at the same time, I will not deal with them. Hearing Zhang Tai's words, Blues' face turned whiter under the moonlight. Seeing the sweat oozing over Blues' forehead, Zhang Tai thought Blues was worrying about him. "Trust me, I've done this kind of thing many times. As long as they come for me in turns, even 7 to 8 wolves a time, I can still deal with them." Saying this, Zhang Tai patted Blues' shoulder and lowered his body, running towards that crack. "Have done this kind of thing many times? With wolves?" Blues was so scared that he almost escaped. What kept him was his curiosity. He really wanted to see what would happen between a person and 60 to 70 wild wolves. This was too terrifying. At this moment, if Zhang Tai knew what Blues was really thinking about, he would have definitely spat blood for a couple of liters. He arrived at a place about 1 meter away from the two sides of the crack. then squatted down and supported himself on the ground using his hands, leaning half of his body inside the crack to explore. The walls on both sides of the crack were like two horizontal high walls for Zhang Tai. Once stepping against both walls inside, he could easily climb down from the top. Actually, the rugged walls were much easier for him to use his strength on than smooth walls. Zhang Tai climbed down over 10 meters in half a minute. The ravine was brimming with howling wild wolves. With 6 lances, Zhang Tai could kill 6 wild wolves. Before the other wild wolves besieged him, he could retreat into this wedge crack, during which he could kill several more wolves in the front. By then, he would have roughly killed 10 wolves. After that, he could kill 10 more wild wolves in the crack. By then, he would have successfully completed tonight's mission and could safely retreat. There were only 2 items that he should keep in mind. First, move fast. Second, don't get surrounded by wild wolves. Almost the moment he reached the ground, Zhang Tai was very calm, and started to calculate precisely. After thinking carefully and feeling that no unexpected problems could exist, Zhang Tai pulled out 2 lances as he took a deep breath and rushed out of the hidden place inside the crack. Seeing Zhang Tai rush out of that crack with lances in hand, Blue's eyes widened once again. What is he doing? Closely after that, Blue saw Zhang Tai's marvelous lance skill. Zhang Tai's first target was a head wolf standing on a huge rock. It was a comparatively large wolf, who was occupying the best place. No other wolves dared to fight for that place with him. The head wolf kept raising its head and howling at the moons. Since pack of wolves with a head wolf's guidance would be more difficult to deal with, Zhang Tai would naturally take eliminating the head wolf as his first task. The lance fell from the sky and pierced straight through the head wolf's body, causing it to fly off the rock. But before the pack of wolves could respond, another lance arrived, nailing a wild wolf to the ground. Within the next 2-3 seconds, sprays of spurting blood could be seen coming from a 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th wolves after their bodies were pierced through by lances, causing miserable howls to echo around the place before death silenced them. At this time, Zhang Tai was like a thug. He abruptly intruded into the wild wolves' party and started his massacre. The lance containers were soon cleared. After that, Zhang Tai pulled out his long sword with his right hand and took the dagger into his left as he rushed towards the 2 wolves that were also charging at him. 2 sprays blood spurted out, caused by the long sword and the dagger at the same time. In a split second, several wolves pounced at Zhang Tai. He adroitly escaped from their attacks, using his long sword and dagger to kill several more wolves in the short period of time that a person needs to take a couple breaths, causing blood of the wild wolves to spray everywhere. More wolves rushed forward. Seeing this, Zhang Tai immediately turned back and started to escape. The fastest 2 wolves rushed out of the pack, aiming to bite him, howling. However, Zhang Tai didn't even slow down. He just changed his footwork and wove his dagger 2 times, causing the 2 wolves to fall down to the ground. Standing at the entrance of the mountain cave on the cliff, Blues was really stunned by what he was seeing. What shocked him the most was Zhang Tai's marvelous lance skills, followed by his brave act of challenging the wolf pack. This time, in his eyes, Zhang Tai was not committing a massacre at all. Instead, he was dancing. The wild wolves were absolutely dancing in pre-prepared moves. They all jumped onto Zhang Tai's dagger and long sword one by one, causing sprays of blood to spurt out one after another. Under that silvery moonlight, everything turned cruelly beautiful. Not until the remaining wolves had besieged Zhang Tai and forced him into that crack did Blues quiver under the night-chilly wind. Thinking of what Zhang Tai had told him, he hurriedly took his bow and ran over there. Before Blues arrived, several more wolves were laid on the ground in the wedge-shaped crack. Zhang Tai kept fighting as he retreated deeper into the crack. Soon, he had reached half the depth of the 20 deep crack. At this position, the width between the 2 walls was less than 2 meters. Although many wild wolves were outside, few of them could rush in and attack Zhang Tai. Like a rock battered by constant sea waves, Zhang Tai just stayed there and constantly cracked down the wild wolves' attacks, causing them to fall one after another with miserable howls. In front of Zhang Tai, a pile of dead wild wolves soon came into being. In Blue's eyes, both the long sword and the dagger in Zhang Tai's hands were like wild wolf grinders. Zhang Tai moved so fast, with both ferociousness and viciousness. It seemed as if he had practiced each move he used to kill the wild wolves for hundreds of times, since they were unimaginably precise and simple. Once hit by Zhang Tai's long sword or dagger, those wild wolves would completely lose their fighting force and fall down. They would never pick themselves up from the ground again. When Zhang Tai chopped at a wild wolf's head using his long sword, reaching only midway, so that half of the head was still hanging on the wolf's neck, blood sprayed all over his face. After this wild wolf fell down, other wolves retreated at the same time, leaving the wedge-shaped crack. Because of their intelligence, the wild wolves understood that they won't win anything by fighting Zhang Tai here in this way. Although leaving the crack, the wild wolves surrounded the entrance and kept watch. Their ferocious eyes were locked onto Zhang Tai as they growled in low voices. After exposing their sharp canines, they scratched the stones and soil on the ground, their bodies lowered. But even though they felt like surging forward, they dared not to do that. Unexpectedly, the beasts were this smart. After wiping off the blood from his face, Zhang Tai burst out laughing. "Are you okay?" Blues shouted from above him. "I'm okay. I can still stand it." Saying this, Zhang Tai rushed forward again with the long sword in hand. He killed those wild wolves which had completely lost their moving ability but haven't died yet. The moment he rushed out of the crack, the surrounding wild wolves charged at him once again. Seeing that, Zhang Tai retreated for the second time. When he reached his previous place, the wild wolves exited too. During the whole rush, another 3 wild wolves had fallen outside. The two parties kept repeating this process. When Zhang Tai rushed out, the wild wolves besieged. After Zhang Tai retreated, leaving several more dead wild wolves, they would fall back too. After repeating this process several times, more wild wolves were killed outside the wedge-shaped crack, causing the pile to grow higher. Even Zhang Tai himself couldn't remember how many times he had launched the seesaw battles with the wild wolves. Finally, seeing him rush out of the crack again, the wild wolves outside immediately turned back and escaped with their tails between their legs. Zhang Tai didn't retreat anymore, instead he kept chasing behind them with loud laughter. Although the remaining wild wolves ran fast, Zhang Tai kept close behind them. After picking up the lances from the ground, he killed 2 more wild wolves that ran slower than the rest. When no more wild wolves could be seen in the ravine, Zhang Tai looked around and found over 40 dead bodies lying about. Under the bright and clear moonlight, the entire ravine was covered with wild wolves' fresh blood and dead bodies. Everything turned tranquil again. He really did it, chasing away all the wild wolves by himself. Seeing his achievement, Zhang Tai became stunned. Previously, he thought that it would be him who would have to escape. Unimaginably, the wild wolves were the ones to run away. Seeing the thrilling scene before his eyes, something flashed across Zhang Tai's mind for a split second, which filled his heart, making him generous. It seems that I could make it. I could really make it. Even facing 70 wild wolves, I could still commit a massacre and scare the sh*t out of them. I can make it. Zhang Tai mumbled. I can make it. Zhang Tai raised his voice, reaffirming it. Raising his head, he glanced at the dead wild wolves all over the grounds. At the same time, something new appeared in his eyes. I can make it, Zhang Tai shouted out loudly with eyes turning extremely stubborn. Ao Wu, Zhang Tai raised his head towards the sky and howled like a wolf, which could be heard in the surroundings. At this time, Blues, calmly standing on the cliff, gazed at that youth covered with blood who had made the miracle in the ravine. Under the moonlight, the youth wore a layer of silver frost like silver armor. It was covered with bloody marks, streaks of beast's blood, like heraldry. Pitch dark night. Full moons. Ravine. Dead wolves. Youth. Fresh blood. What a visually shocking scene. Moved, Blues felt that the scene before his eyes seemed to predict something. It became distant. Sadly, he was not an authoritative expert on occultism and wasn't good at predicting. So he didn't know what future was behind that distant scene. That guy is really handsome. Blues mumbled. Chapter 139, Relaxing. Being dreamless, last night was Zhang Tai's best sleep during the past days. Especially since together with Blues he had set up that bear trap on the path people had to take if they wanted to enter where the two people were sleeping. The whole night wolves' howls drifted into the mountain cave from the prairie outside. Some howls seemed like they were coming from not that far off. If it was before, Zhang Tai would have definitely not been able to sleep well. He would have definitely checked outside again and again with lance in hand to reassure himself that there was nothing there. However, last night, Zhang Tai had slept unexpectedly well. The never-ending wolf howls outside the mountain cave reminded him of dog barks and the sound of raindrops falling onto the roof of his own attic at home in Black Hot City. It seemed to be a rainy night as raindrops and dog barks drifted into his ears from outside. Everything combined into a sort of tranquility. Hearing those common noises, Zhang Tai felt reassured and easily fell asleep. Zhang Tai knew that it was not raining outside the mountain cave. The wolf howls were still wolf howls. Where he lay was a mountain cave on the border of the Crescent Prairie instead of his own attic. Nothing had changed except for his inner heart and his own feelings. Like how he had felt being a flesh bag in the Iron Thorns fighting club. When he changed his attitude and emotions towards it, everything changed. Last night, Zhang Tai had experienced a wholly new change inside himself. Not knowing why. Perhaps because he came back late last night, His biological clock didn't wake him up a bit after 6 a.m. the next morning as usual. When Zhang Tai woke up, the sun had already risen high. He felt so comfortable that the moment reminded him of the feel of waking up late in the morning at home. His parents spoiled him like that sometimes. During the holidays, when he didn't need to go to school, his mom always liked to see him wake up late morning like a pig and get up when the sun was hanging so high in the sky. It shone on his face. Before Zhang Tai was 12, his mom would take away his quilt and pat his fat bottom to wake him up in the late morning. When Zhang Tai would open his dizzy eyes, he could always see the happy smile on his mom's face and that assumed solemnity after the smile. That was his mom's most beautiful smile in Zhang Tai's memory. When Zhang Tai woke up, Blues had already left, leaving Zhang Tai alone. Last night, after Zhang Tai had returned, Blues seemed to have been stimulated, feeling like he was seeing a weird monster with 3 heads and 6 arms when he looked at Zhang Tai. Zhang Tai had felt it even in sleep. Blues got up very early this morning and left after picking up his bow and arrows. After waking up, Zhang Tai didn't get up immediately. Instead, he just stayed in his sleeping bag and listened to the various sounds drifting in from outside the mountain cave, including tweets of birds and insects and the sound of bye-bye produced by tree leaves in the wind. It really felt like sleeping in late at home. Zhang Tai stretched his body with satisfaction, then slowly got up. Although it was his big day today, Zhang Tai felt very relaxed. Filled to the brim with the comfortable feeling, he really felt like living a weekend at home. Donder said that whatever you did, you should learn to be relaxed after busy work. The law of being relaxed after busy work was the law of yin and yang in the East. Since he was tense the whole day before, Zhang Tai decided to have a good rest today. After a good rest, he would then choose a place to eat fruits. That was Zhang Tai's full plan for today. The clothes that he wore last night were put aside. If there was anything unsatisfactory last night, it would be the wolf's blood that covered his body from top to bottom. With the exception of his inner clothes, all that he had worn last night had to be changed and washed at once. Blues had said he was very cool and handsome last night. However, no matter how cool and handsome he was last night, his clothes would never get clean themselves. After getting up, Zhang Tai changed to a clean set of clothes. He then slowly cleaned his face and mouth at a pond outside the mountain cave before swaggering back. After grabbing the pile of dirty clothes, he moved back onto a stone beside the pond and started to wash them carefully. Zhang Tai's coat and trousers were both ordinary and jet black, made of kaolin cloth, which was a machine-woven cloth. The most evident features of kaolin cloth were low price and abrasion resistance. Because it was made of cotton, despite not being waterproof and not having the greatest look, it could maintain warmth. Most of the students at school wore this, which was also the most favorite cloth of civilians in Black Hot City. As for that costume of city guard army left by his elder brother, unless it was an evening party, Zhang Tai would never wear it daily during survival training. As for the bloody places on his pitch-black kaolin cloth, he could not see the red stains after a simple washing. Unless carefully looking for them, he could not even discover the delicate difference between the cleaned bloody places and their surroundings. However, the wolf blood on his white coarse linen shirt could not be cleaned no matter how hard he washed it, especially from the collar. So he couldn't wear the white shirt anymore as compensation for last night's crazy massacre. Zhang Tai's vest was also sprayed with some wolf blood, one stain remaining even after being washed. Since the vest was worn close to his body, Zhang Tai didn't fear about the stain being noticed by others. One thing though, he couldn't take the white shirt back home. If the beast blood was seen on the shirt, his mom would definitely flick his forehead fiercely, causing it to swell, when she thought of the danger at that time. Don't show off your talent in front of the public. This was what his mom had confided to him for over several hundred times. Of course, Zhang Tai didn't want to let his mom worry about him. The Wild Wolf Valley and the Crescent Prairie didn't lack water sources. The pond he was using was only 100 m away from his base. Previously, if Zhang Tai wanted to wash his clothes here, he would have taken a weapon to be reassured. However, this time he took nothing except his dirty clothes. After washing his coat and trousers, when Zhang Tai was washing his socks, 2 wild wolves came to the pond. They drank by one side of the pond. After drinking, one of them raised its head and caught sight of Zhang Tai on the other side. At this time, Zhang Tai also raised his head and peered at the 2 wild wolves, then he lowered his head and returned to washing his socks again. Strangely, when he saw common wild wolves in a group of 3 to 5 now, Zhang Tai felt nothing. Let alone fear, he didn't even feel his heart pound faster. Glaring at Zhang Tai, the 2 wild wolves exposed their sharp canines, seeming a bit hesitant. After washing a sock, Zhang Tai raised his head again and found the 2 wolves were still there. He then became impatient. Picking up a small cobble, Zhang Tai casually threw it at them like chasing away a cat slipping into his home to steal fish. Piss off. After falling into the water, the cobble produced ripples. Seeming to be scared, the two wild wolves put their tails between their legs and disappeared into the grasses, never reappearing again. Zhang Tai felt good today and didn't want to kill any more. It was just a small episode. By the time he had finished washing the clothes and putting them to dry on a branch beside a bonfire in the mountain cave, it was noon. Missing Blue's yummy roasted hare, Zhang Tai took a lance and walked out. Half an hour later, he returned and started to roast a hare over the bonfire in the mountain cave. Although the clothes beside the bonfire dried up very quickly, they didn't smell as good as those dried under the sun's light. He could smell a faint tinge of smoke on them. However, since he was a loner, nobody would care about it. Soon, the aroma of the hare being cooked over the fire drifted through the air. Imitating Blue's method, Zhang Tai left some openings in the hare using his dagger and sprayed some salt and powder of wild pepper that he had collected in the Wild Wolf Valley when the hare was dropping off golden oil. Perhaps, Blue's had some special treatment method as Zhang Tai could not make it as yummy as that of Blue's. But he was already very satisfied. After eating half of the hare, he burped, then went to find a huge tree beside the mountain cave. Climbing up, Zhang Tai found a place and sat there. He then enjoyed the breeze under the shadow of the tree's crown, watching the endless gorgeous scenery of the crescent prairie in the distance. White clouds were slowly moving through the crystal blue sky. Several huge birds were hovering in the sky. The prairie seemed endless as the land was as straight as a blanket. Some wild wolves were chasing after a pack of antelopes. As one was isolated from its pack, the wild wolves locked onto it. The antelope kept dashing forward like a long jump expert. It kept jumping forward in its escape. Each time it would jump very far. However, the wild wolves chased closely after it. Due to the wild wolves' terrifying endurance and speed, that antelope didn't pick itself up again after the last jump. Zhang Tai then took a nap on the tree. When he opened his eyes again, the sun had moved to the west, and the wind felt a bit chilly. Feeling fully energy, Zhang Tai jumped off the tree and entered the mountain cave. After heating up the remaining half of the hare on the fire, Zhang Tai arranged his clothes and luggage and left with the lance container and his weapons. The moment he left the mountain cave, Zhang Tai had sped up. He soon entered the cruising condition as a loner. His condition now was unprecedented, good both physically and spiritually. Zhang Tai could feel that he had reached his peak condition ever since he was born 15 years ago. It was the right moment for him to improve to LV3 and experience the effect of the Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit. Since Blues had already visited this place, Zhang Tai couldn't be certain that he would not come back. Additionally, the mountain cave was not very deep and hidden, so of course Zhang Tai would not choose to complete his most important improvement here. The safest place that he could find was still that number 1 base, the mountain cave created by gold-eating boas. It's unknown when I'll be able to casually access the castle of black iron, not afraid of being known by others, Zhang Tai thought while running. However, he didn't know that when he left the mountain cave, Glaze had been close to him. When Zhang Tai passed by the grass on the hillside, he was less than 400 m away from Glaze. Although Zhang Tai had not seen him, in the woods nearby, Glaze had caught sight of him. Seeing Zhang Tai's back, Glaze revealed a shadow of a grin in the corner of his mouth. Chapter 140, The Booming of the Wild Wolf 7 Strength Fruit. Zhang Tai didn't know that after he became a loner, Glaze had searched for him in the Wild Wolf Valley for several days. In Glaze's eyes, Zhang Tai was still that trivial LV1 warrior, LV2 at most. As a LV3 warrior, he thought that he would still have the absolute advantage. So his purpose for coming to Zhang Tai was obvious. However, Zhang Tai's speed of growth or some hidden force was surprising to everybody, causing Glaze to have a hard time sleeping and eating well. Loner was the role with the highest casualty chance during the survival training. After silently negotiating with Zuhair, Glaze also declared to the public that he would start a loner's survival training. Zhang Tai moved at a medium speed. Since Glaze did not dare to get too close to him, he stayed far behind, at the distance farthest he could without letting Zhang Tai disappear from his vision. The best thing for Glaze was to find Zhang Tai's base. When the night fell, everything would be easily solved. Zhang Tai was not able to notice that someone was following him yet. After one day's rest, the only things in his mind were the gorgeous fruits on that small tree in Castle of Black Iron, the ripe leafless fruit and the Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit. 1 hour later, Zhang Tai arrived at the woods on the hillside near where the gold-eating boa's cave was hidden. After several rounds of fights with Zhang Tai, Glaze was afraid of him due to his numerous tricks. He didn't know whether Zhang Tai had already noticed him and just wanted to lure him into the woods. Anyone who had a bit experience would know that it was the most dangerous to follow a person into the woods. Once surrounded by the trees, the roles of the two people could easily change. The latter one might encounter the earlier one's ambush and be trapped. So Glaze was hesitant. He wanted to see whether Zhang Tai would come out of there. After waiting outside the woods for half an hour, Glaze still didn't see Zhang Tai leave. At this time, the sun had already went down, and the Wild Wolf Valley started to be covered by the night colors. Did Zhang Tai live in that hillside? Realizing that, Glaze bravely ventured inside. After 1 hour, it became completely dark. Feeling very dejected, Glaze walked out of the woods. By then, he had confirmed that Zhang Tai had noticed him and slipped away during the period when he hesitated whether to enter or not. After carefully searching the entire hillside and woods, Glaze couldn't find Zhang Tai nor any trace of human being settlement. So Zhang Tai became more cunning in Glaze's mind. F***ck, you have good luck today, Glaze swore as he left the hillside. Almost the moment Glaze left the hillside, in the castle of Black Iron, like what had happened after eating the first leafless fruit, the second burning point on Zhang Tai's spine that radiated cyan lights consecutively broke through the blue light pass and the purple light pass. Boom! The purple light on the burning point was broken into light points that resembled rain. After that, the burning point turned pitch black. Soon after, a red sparkle appeared in the darkness. The sparkle then started to grow into an eternal flame, lighting up the whole burning point. After the second burning point on his spine was ignited, Zhang Tai felt that his entire spine had become transparent. The places surrounding the burning point warmed up. Zhang Tai felt so relaxed, like having unloaded a heavy burden or opening a heavy lock inside his body. At the same time, a great new strength rose up in him. After opening his eyes, Zhang Tai screamed loudly and jumped up from the ground. He then started to rush around the grounds of the castle of Black Iron. He kept running for half an hour before stopping. Faster speed, longer time, greater endurance, and more ease. This was how Zhang Tai felt while running. After running, he only rested a few minutes before lying on the ground to practice the lying tiger move. This time, it lasted for roughly 30 minutes. After practicing the lying tiger move, Zhang Tai practiced 36 freehand moves, the whole set of Iron Blood Fist skill once. This time, he could make it more like how Tiger attacked. After becoming a LV3 warrior, Zhang Tai felt that his strength had increased by at least 30%. Along with the increasing strength was his endurance, responsiveness, and coordination of all physical aspects. This feeling of growing stronger was really fascinating. Zhang Tai, congratulations. You've become a LV3 warrior. Zhang Tai shouted out loudly in another voice. What else do you want to say? Ha, ha. I have a wild wolf 7 strength fruit to eat. I cannot wait to experience the feel of a wild wolf's strength in my body. Saying this, Zhang Tai walked towards the small tree. He then took a deep breath. The rich fragrance surrounding the small tree was radiating from the ripe wild wolf 7 strength fruit. Although ripe, with the exception of its purely white body having become translucent like crystal, the wild wolf 7 strength fruits remained unchanged. It was still a cute wolf cub with 2 leaves on its head. Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit has gathered the strength of chi, the strength of blood, the strength of vein, the strength of channel, the strength of bone, the strength of marrow, and the strength of God of a wild wolf. Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit has become ripe. Usage: pick and directly eat it. Notice, the fruit cannot be taken out of the castle of Black Iron. After 12 hours of having been picked off the tree, its energy and vitality will gradually decline. Beside the ripe Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit was another Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit, which was Zhang Tai's latest achievement. After last night's massacre, besides the first one becoming absolutely ripe, a second one also came into being. Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit has gathered the strength of chi and the strength of blood of a wild wolf. 5 more strengths need to be formed. This fruit has not become ripe yet. This was the message about the second Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit. It reminded Zhang Tai that he had killed at least 14 wild wolves, more than the number he had predicted last night, driving 2 more strengths of the latest Wild Wolf 7 strength fruit to be formed. At this time, Zhang Tai had already understood the tip: for each 50 changes, 49 of them are available, while the remaining 1 belongs to people. If it was anyone else, after they killed 50 wolves, all of their energy, chi, and blood, including the 7 strengths in each wolf's body, would dissipate and return to Mother Nature. However, since Zhang Tai had obtained the small tree, if he killed 50 wolves, the 7 strengths of the 50 wolves would not completely dissipate. Instead, only 49 wolves' 7 strengths would be returned to Mother Nature. The remaining 1 wolf's 7 strengths would be transferred into the small tree, like how people digested food, finally forming a wild wolf 7 strength fruit. Each wolf would contribute 1/50th of their strengths to 1 wild wolf 7 strength fruit. One could eat wolf meat to gain strength. Similarly, the small tree was like an invisible mouth which could eat the 7 strengths of wolves that could not be seen by people and form a wild wolf 7-strength fruit. The small tree named Manjasaka Karma fruit tree was really too powerful, unable to be predicted by gods and demons. Zhang Tai was awed by the small tree once again. At the same time, he started to be filled with gratitude for being favored by the god of destiny. Compared to the leafless fruit, the wild wolf 7-strength fruit was what Zhang Tai was looking forward to most today. After digesting that leafless fruit, Zhang Tai successfully improved to a LV3 warrior. Now, it was the right time for him to try the effects of the ripe wild wolf 7-strength fruit. After picking off that wolf cub from the tree, Zhang Tai carefully put it onto his palm. As if enjoying an artwork, Zhang Tai watched it for quite a while. The fruit was really vivid. Zhang Tai even felt regretful for having to eat it. However, after enjoying it for a while, he finally made the decision. With eyes closed, he quickly threw the wolf cub into his mouth and swallowed it after a couple of bites. Almost 10 seconds after he swallowed it, the effect of the wild wolf 7-strength fruit began to show up. With eyes closed, Zhang Tai sat on the ground with crossed legs, only feeling a wisp of energy and heat slowly gathering up in his chest. The energy and heat finally formed 7 strengths in his chest which kept swirling in a clockwise manner like 7 fish. At this moment, Zhang Tai felt his chest was like a swollen balloon, close to exploding from the energy within. Of course, those energies did not burst his chest because the 7 strengths soon found their own directions to go. The first strength swam across Zhang Tai's chest and abdomen and finally entered the Qi Si, 2 inches below his navel. Closely after that, Zhang Tai felt his Qi Si expanding in his mind and could almost hear the sound of a heavy wind blowing by. The second strength swam to Zhang Tai's heart and flew into his blood from his heart before spreading through the rest of his body. Then, Zhang Tai was almost certain he heard the sound of strength flowing in his vessels. The third strength swam to Zhang Tai's brain and entered his muscles by thousands of individual strengths. After that, Zhang Tai thought he heard his muscles resonating like the strings of a lyre. The fourth strength swam across Zhang Tai's whole body along a weird path that Zhang Tai had never heard of before and disappeared. Closely after that, he was sure he heard the sound from his body like that produced when a huge tree is knocked at. It was powerful and low, and full of the feel of wood. The fifth strength swam to the top of Zhang Tai's head before flowing downwards like water and entered his skeleton. Later on, it sounded as if metals and stones were knocked against his bones. The sixth strength swam to Zhang Tai's rear end before entering his spine from there. After that, it spread to the middle of the spine and entered the marrow of all the bones. Zhang Tai could almost hear a drumming sound in his bones akin to a booming of the land. The final strength swam into that pale golden chi swirl that represented Zhang Tai's spiritual energy. Zhang Tai thought he heard a distant wolf howl. At the same time, the chi swirl that represented his spiritual energy abruptly expanded a lot. As a result, his spiritual energy suddenly rose by 5%, causing Zhang Tai to tremble all over as he opened his eyes. This was a very strange feeling. Although his look remained unchanged, Zhang Tai felt like he had grown up a lot. He felt a strong sense of existence, strength, and coordination. This was a metamorphosis physically and spiritually from inside to outside, and a real growing up instead of mere development of his muscles, bones, and height. At this moment, if Zhang Tai had to describe his feeling using one word, it would be great. Really great. He felt a sense of rebirth. After igniting the new burning point, Zhang Tai felt like having unloaded a heavy burden and opening a shackle. But this time he felt that he had changed to a better body that was more suitable for him. He had completed an update and improved all over, bringing him a fresher and more shocking feeling. This was how it felt after one wolf's strength formed in his body. At the sight of another wild wolf 7-strength fruit, Zhang Tai revealed a smile. Wild wolves in the Crescent Prairie, don't run away, you're all mine, Zhang Tai uttered in a weird voice before leaving the castle of black iron. When Zhang Tai moved to the entrance of the gold-eating boa's cave, he was stunned by the fact that it was already late morning. Does it mean that it took me one night to digest that wild wolf 7-strength fruit? Zhang Tai was shocked. Since he was in deep meditation, he could have never imagined that over 10 hours could pass so fast. However, it was all worthwhile. The moment Zhang Tai wanted to exit, he was shocked by noticing something different on the ground from when he had entered. After entering, Zhang Tai had grabbed a handful of soil from the ground near the cave and evenly sprayed it over the ground near the entrance. This was the simplest and easiest form of natural trace system used as an early warning. Now he saw several new footprints on the ground where he had sprayed the soil. They were large footprints, at least larger than those of Zhang Tai's. Seeing them, Zhang Tai had a sense of déjà vu. He thought back to the bloody footprints in the wild wolf den and immediately knew what had happened. It had to be Glaze. Glaze must have visited here. Zhang Tai then carefully checked the dew on the weeds near the mountain cave. The dew was still there, which meant that Glaze had not come this morning. Neither did he leave this place in the morning. It was last night. Soon after Zhang Tai had entered the cave, Glaze had also went in. Perhaps he had been following him. Did it mean that Glaze had discovered his secret? Thinking of this, Zhang Tai became tense. No way. Even if Glace had entered the cave, he could not see him enter the castle of black iron. The cave was very deep. If Glaze couldn't find him, he would only think that he had hidden somewhere. Why would he follow me then? Thinking of how Glaze had glared at him, Zhang Tai understood it. His heart started to pound from the other's killing intent.